right, it's working.
Excellent. Well, we are coming up right on 6 o'clock, so I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to our April 21st, 2021 meeting of the Traffic and Transportation Advisory Commission. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Let's go. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And Chair, if I could ask Mrs. Marcelino to please call a roll.
Thank you. Commissioner Ferris?
Present.
Commissioner Fletcher?
Here.
Vice Chair Eno?
Here.
Chair Lemo?
Here.
Commissioner Hayek is absent.
Yes, and I'd like to just add that in this case, Victor Hayek, Commissioner Victor Hayek is not here. I should note that he is not able to join us tonight because he also has the General Plan Advisory Committee, which is also meeting tonight. So we thank him for his service on that committee. And with that, Ms. Marcelino, can you please make the public comments announcement for us tonight?
This is the time and place for public comments. Registration for public comments was available until the start of the meeting for those wishing to address the Traffic Commission regarding items on the agenda or on a subject within the city's jurisdiction. Speakers for specific agenda items shall be called and heard during that specific item. All remarks should be addressed to the Traffic Commission as a whole, and all documents for the Commission and the official record should be presented to the recording secretary prior to the meeting. Speakers are requested to state their name and community of residence for the record. Under state law, public comment matters may not be considered by the Traffic Commission unless listed on the agenda, but may be referred to the city engineer for administrative follow-up. No one has requested to speak under public comments. Also, please silence all cell phones during the meeting, and please remember to mute your microphones when you are not speaking. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Marcelino. So there are no public comments, and with that, then we will go directly to our summary notes of March 17th, 2021, and that is in your packet, Commissioners, under item 5. And this, from what I understand, is simply a review of our summary notes. No action is required. So if you could all just take a minute to take a look at that and make sure that those are in order and that you don't have any changes. And if there are no comments, we're going to move to item number 6. Okay, hearing no comments, we will move forward. The first engineer's report is to be presented by our senior engineer, Jim Michiko, and it is our Montgomery Road Traffic Concerns Information Item Report by Senior Engineer Jim Michiko. And again, I want to remind everyone, no action is required. If it's okay, Mr. Michiko, I'll turn the floor over to you.
Oh, just excuse me, just inadvertently hit the wrong button here. I'm going to have to go back to the share screen. Okay, yes, thank you, Chair Lemo. This is an information item, as you had just mentioned, on the recent traffic concerns expressed by the residents of Montgomery Road between Avenida de las Flores to Jans Road. The item was referred to the Traffic Commission after a number of residents recently shared their traffic concerns to staff as well as in emails to the City Council. Here's a neighborhood map which points out the segment of Montgomery Road that is of interest. It's just over ½ a mile in length. Montgomery Road serves as a residential collector street as it collects and funnels traffic within the neighborhood's interior streets. This road is unique because it also provides access to the Conejo Valley Adult School. Montgomery serves a neighborhood that is bounded by Flores to the north, 23 Freeway to the east, Jans Road to the south, and Moore Park Road to the west. This segment of Montgomery has had some level of traffic concerns for over 30 years. So I'm going to describe some of the history and the importance of neighborhood support before any significant traffic measures are implemented from this point forward. The city is not actively considering any action at this time, and we have not received any petitions that demonstrate the required majority of the neighborhood support any alterations to neighborhood traffic circulation. To start, let's look at a typical roadway cross-section shown here. The current pavement width is 28 feet from rolled curb to rolled curb, and it's within a 60-foot wide right-of-way. This is one of the few city streets that have qualified and approved for speed humps to control speeding. Residents fronting Montgomery Road have shared their traffic concerns to the city and have identified the traffic volume and speeding being at the top of their list. The volume of traffic on Montgomery is composed of traffic from 3 different sources. Number 1, the residents from within the neighborhood. Number 2, the adult school. Number 3, shortcut traffic, which are the vehicles bypassing Moorpark Road and have found Montgomery to serve as a convenient parallel access route. Although speed is a primary concern, our field studies have indicated that speed humps along the street are effectively keeping the prevailing speeds at or below the 25-mile-per-hour speed limit. Here I'm going to share you a series of slides showing the various traffic controls set up throughout the neighborhood. First off are the speed humps on Montgomery Road, installed in 1989. There's 10 in place. As I just mentioned, they are keeping most speeds at or below 25 miles an hour. In 1997, the city added speed humps on Colgate Drive, which is the next street over, at the request of the residents to mitigate traffic diversion from Montgomery Road. And this photo shows the speed humps as well as the stop signs in blue posted throughout the neighborhood. And this map is shows the stakeholders within the Waverly Heights neighborhood. Depending on the measures the Montgomery Road residents propose, traffic would be forced to shift to other streets if traffic is reduced on Montgomery. Over the years, we have advised the residents that if they desired to implement other forms of traffic control to lessen the volume of traffic on their street, it could impact traffic on the rest of the neighborhood. In general, traffic measures to reduce traffic on one street does not necessarily eliminate a problem. It simply diverts it to an adjacent street, which can create a domino effect in new traffic concerns and new requests for traffic control measures on the impacted streets. As such, the 400 homes highlighted here should be involved in any efforts to alter neighborhood traffic patterns. We have advised the residents that altering neighborhood traffic patterns should involve all the stakeholders who rely on Montgomery for local access. This includes stakeholders both within and outside the neighborhood listed here. This slide shows the locations where traffic volumes were measured within the neighborhood and on the surrounding streets in 2016. The measurements were recorded during weekdays and weekends. This slide shows the speeds that were measured in the neighborhood and on surrounding streets, also in 2016. Also in 2016, we also measured the shortcut traffic on Montgomery Road. These are the vehicles bypassing Moorpark Road and cutting through the neighborhood to reduce their travel time. The process involves a license plate survey where staff members position themselves at the entry and exit points of the neighborhood on Flores and on Jans and record every license plate of vehicles entering and exiting. We selected 4 of the busiest periods when we felt shortcutting was believed to be the highest. And based on those results, the data shows 23 to 42% of traffic on Montgomery Road are shortcutters during those 4 survey periods. Here's a bar chart that shows the history of traffic volume measurements dating back to 1987, when the traffic volume levels were 3,400 vehicles per day. After the speed humps were installed in 1989, the traffic was reduced to 2,300 vehicles per day. We have a red horizontal line on this chart to show the roadway capacity of a typical residential street, which is 2,500 vehicles per day. Through 2001, the traffic volume levels were below this line. But in 2006, the traffic volume levels were back to what they were before the speed humps were installed, and has held rather steady at roughly 3,500 vehicles per day through 2016. Last summer during the pandemic, a traffic measurement was taken, and it shows that it was reduced significantly at under 2,000 vehicles per day. And as health restrictions begin to lighten, we do expect traffic volumes to increase again and possibly return to 2016 levels. In 2006, a group of Montgomery Road residents contacted staff regarding their concerns over traffic and speed and other traffic-related issues. And at that time, staff performed a number of traffic measurements, which I covered earlier, and discussed a number of engineering options to calm traffic along Montgomery Road, which I'll get into more detail shortly. The residents were advised that to achieve their goal of reduced traffic volume, the residents would have to obtain majority support from the collective neighborhood, not strictly from the residents of Montgomery Road in the form of a petition that they circulated themselves. The residents did not obtain the support of the rest of the neighborhood to curb the usage of Montgomery Road. 10 years later, in 2016, another group of residents along Montgomery Road approached the city with the same concerns expressed a decade earlier. This particular group hosted a neighborhood meeting at the Grant Brimhall Library to express and discuss their traffic issues on Montgomery. The city participated as the residents presented a proposal to calm traffic to the neighborhood. They proposed 5 specific actions, some of which would have to be decided upon by the school and park districts. In short, the outcome of those efforts did not result in the neighborhood support. They were seeking towards a specific set of actions that the city would process and evaluate for possible implementation. Here's a listing of some of the traffic reducing measures that were discussed with the residents in 2006 and in 2016. The decision to implement some of the measures, such as an alternate access point, would involve the school and park districts. Each of these measures have varying degrees of severity. The greater the severity, the greater potential diversion of traffic and associated impacts onto other neighborhood streets, or ideally pushing traffic back to the surrounding arterial streets. The city has a policy on street closures approved by the City Council in 1992 under Resolution 92-167. And to qualify for consideration of a street closure, a petition signed by a minimum 60% of affected property owners is needed to demonstrate neighborhood support of the lead petitioner's proposal. If a petition requirement is met, staff would then study the location to determine if the policy's numerical criteria are met, as well as look into the legal and emergency response access issues surrounding the potential closure of a street. And here's an example of a street closure implemented on Calle Contento at Moore Park Road about 30 years ago, which eliminates shortcut traffic between Moore Park Road and Olson Road. This location met all the criteria of Resolution 92-167. This design allows for emergency vehicles to drive through them through the plastic vertical posts at the ends. And we do have solid steel posts with signs in the middle segment to serve to close off through traffic. There are occasional drivers and motorcyclists that drive over or through the plastic posts, resulting in the need for enforcement. If street closures are set up within the Waverly Heights neighborhood, a closure or closures would likely have a similar design to this one. During the 2016 meeting at the library, staff made a suggestion to the residents that 2 street closures shown here may achieve their goal of lessening the volume of traffic on Montgomery. One closure would be on Montgomery and the second one on Brush Hill Road, both south of Calle Jasmine. This concept eliminates the shortcut commuter traffic flowing through the neighborhood, yet still retains access for local residents and for the adult school. One closure would not work alone, since shortcut traffic would simply divert to the secondary route. Closing off both the primary and secondary routes to shortcut traffic is needed to eliminate the shortcutting through the neighborhood. This concept likely redistributes neighborhood traffic patterns on nearly all neighborhood streets, yet may not create significant inconveniences for all. It would likely split the neighborhood in half, meaning that the residents on the north side would no longer have access to Jan's, and the residents on the south side would no longer have access to Flores. Some residents attempted to circulate a petition for this two-street closure concept, but did not reach the minimum 60% support for the city to evaluate it fully. So the next steps are for the residents to work collaboratively together to determine if they can achieve neighborhood support on a proposal to lessen the traffic on Montgomery and disperse it to other streets. This is clearly a neighborhood decision. The city will assist the residents in their collaborative efforts to identify some of the pros and cons of the measures they will consider and point out possible unintended consequences of these traffic calming measures. If street closures are proposed by the residents, the process requires a need to meet the city's street closure guidelines and an evaluation of emergency access and legal issues. So with that said, this concludes the staff report, and we'll be pleased to answer any questions of the commission. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mashenko. That's an excellent report. Before we move on to speakers on this report, do we have any questions of staff from our commissioners?
I'll jump in, Mr. Chair, if I could.
Sure.
Thank you for the presentation. As always, very well done, very thorough, and a nice recapping of kind of the history of how we got here. I was a little kind of shocked and surprised, and maybe you can just fill me in on exactly what the resolution 92-167 says, because it seems like when you have a traffic issue that has been going on for so long in a city and so long on one particular street, and some of the figures show that at some point up to 42% of the traffic going down Montgomery Road is a shortcut piece of traffic. Why is it so contingent on the neighborhood to come up with a proposed solution versus the guidance of really the experts in the room and city staff? So maybe you could help me just kind of shed some light on what that resolution says and what are the requirements? Because I struggle with that, because these are average neighborhood residents that are concerned about traffic. That's what they know. They know there's an issue, and they're looking for guidance from the experts in the room as to a solution.
Before staff answers, can I just weigh in with a comment real quick? Is that okay, Mr. Mashiko?
Yeah, that's fine.
The one thing I want to make certain, because I don't want to hang this on staff, is that the reason that you do need significant support from the neighborhood, regardless of the traffic issue, is, if for nothing else, the domino effect. Our problem gets fixed and it becomes their problem or their problem. And so for that reason, the resolution sets benchmarks that need to be achieved. And by the way, I'm not speaking just specifically of this particular situation, of all traffic situations. The experts in the room are absolutely staff, but staff has to follow a criteria set forth by council, and council's criteria, which I believe is also part of the state's criteria, is certain benchmarks. For example, there are some streets that if we were to put in the right mitigations, we would immediately solve a traffic problem for that street. But unfortunately, the streets surrounding that street would now gain a new traffic problem. With that, if I haven't messed up your answer to your question, Mr. Mashiko, let me stop my interrupting and get back to you.
Okay, no, I think Chair Lemo, you're 100% correct. The street closure policy is set up only for our residential streets, and we have it set up it begins with that petition process because we do want that neighborhood support. Otherwise, as Chair Lemo described, you just have that domino effect. You're pushing it from point A to point B, and then Street B is going to approach the city saying, "Okay, you did Street A. Now, what about us?" So that's why in this case, there's a lot of interior streets throughout that neighborhood. I think they all need to be involved in the process, and they should all determine whether or not changes in their circulation pattern, how they get to the store, how they get to all destinations that they're going to and from. They should all have a say in the matter.
So thank you for the answer. Just so I can clarify, though, this really is limited to street closures on that particular resolution, or is this any kind of traffic calming measures or traffic mitigation?
Yeah, I can tell you that virtually any level of traffic mitigation is tied to some sort of whether you're looking for speed humps, whether you're looking for stop signs, whatever. There are certain warrants that need to be met in virtually every traffic situation. I don't know, quite frankly. I'm very familiar with almost all of the warrants necessary. I don't know if those come from our city or if they come directly from the state or if it's a combination thereof. But I can tell you, Commissioner Pletcher, virtually every traffic mitigation that exists ties to some sort of warrant or standard that must be met in order to proceed to the next step.
Sir, and I certainly understand and agree with you, Mr. Chair, but I'll tell you, I've gotten a significant number of neighbors reached out and spoke to me on this issue. And really where they came from is they just kind of put up their hands and said, we've lived on this street for 15, 20 years, and this doesn't seem to be really what it was is this doesn't seem to be an issue the city cares about. And it's very sad to hear when our residents say that, because I know that's not true. And, I addressed it the best I could because I don't unfortunately know the history from 2006 on. But I just want to make very clear tonight, what really are the standards? Why does city staff act on a certain way? Or what are the rules of the game here to actually get in there and address the issues at hand and really help the residents understand what is required in order to address this issue once and for all? Because
okay. Let me do this, if I may. First of all, I know we're going to hear that again. I do know for a fact that if there is anyone who has been concerned about a traffic issue for more than 6 to 8 months, they have had those standards explained. And I happen to know by looking at my packet tonight that the Montgomery Road folks definitely know what the requirements are because they have been through them 2 or 3 times and without success. That being said, though, this I think may be something that we would handle under our discussion after public comments. I think if there are specific questions about the report, but I do think we should discuss this after we have the residents a chance to speak. So let's do this. Are there specific questions about the report we received? And then, of course, we will have discussion after our residents get to speak.
Many of this is I guess many of this are discussion points and discussion items. And I know Commissioner Ferris has his hand up, so I'll turn it over to him.
Sure. I'm sorry. I didn't recognize that little sign there, so I should have. I'm sorry. Commissioner Ferris, please go ahead with your questions to staff.
All right, thanks. So the one question I guess I had out of this is that when it comes to closures, when the current manner by which we close, it is either it's closed to all traffic or it's not closed. That's kind of the way we do, or we have the speed bump or calming device. Is there with any new technology and traffic items an ability to have a dynamic closure to where during given periods of time where we think a lot of this shortcut traffic that would create a closure so that the people in the neighborhood would know when those are occurring. It would mitigate the traffic coming through as a shortcut, but then past that time, it would be able to open the street so that the people on the north and south side don't feel like they're on one side of this closure or not. It was just something, I don't know if that's something that's available, or as Chair Lemo has mentioned, that there might be some warrant that doesn't quite tie to allowing for that. I'm just trying to think of a creative way of getting potentially what Commissioner Pletcher is saying is like, it's either do it or don't do it. And that's kind of the only thing. Is there a new way, technology is supposed to solve everything, right? So.
Yeah, I guess we're not aware of any type of technology that, like an automated system, maybe where there's a clock that's attached to a gate that automatically closes and opens depending on what time of day. I mean, that's something that we could probably look into. But I think street closures in Southern California are rather rare. So usually if they go in there, it's a permanent closure.
And I guess to add to that, Chair, if I may, that probably also serves for the predictability sake too. I mean, for either with delivery trucks or mail or emergency services and so forth, that having different hours, or if it's open or closed, might cause its own problems, or wind up sending vehicles down the road which didn't realize it's closed. Now they have to make a U-turn, and we don't have a proper cul-de-sac there. So there are some other challenges potentially with having a dynamic timing of the street open or closed. But again, as Jim Michiko mentioned, we can definitely look into that.
That'd be worth asking. Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Ferris. Are there any other questions of our commissioners prior to us getting some public comment? If not, then I will ask Ms. Marcelino. We do have speakers on this subject, is that correct?
Yes, Chair. One individual has requested to speak on this item. Speakers are allowed 3 minutes, and for the record, no written statement was received. We have our speaker ready. Please click unmute and state your name and city of residence for the record. You will be reminded when you only have 1 minute remaining, and then again when your time to speak is up. Thank you.
Okay, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can.
Okay, this is, my name is Joel Schnowski. I'm a resident of Waverly Heights. And just to kind of keep the commission brief, we had been, a group of us neighbors have been communicating with Mr. Haydari and Mr. Michiko over the past couple of weeks regarding this issue. We have pretty much unanimously come to the conclusion that we would like to petition for the road closure for what Mr. Michiko had provided in 2016, which was the closure just south of Calle Jasmine off of Montgomery, and then also the additional closure just south of Calle Jasmine off of Brush Hill. One of the things that we would like to get more information from the city is if we are to do this petition, we would really appreciate the Traffic Commission providing us with as much data and information as possible before we do the petition. And that includes guidelines on emergency access if this closure is supposed to go through. Also, regarding that picture of the other street closure, I had brought up an idea of potentially using actual bollards, concrete or steel, due to the fact that it seems that those types of street closures really don't adhere to full cut through traffic. And if there's a way that, emergency personnel could have access to removing the bollards or lowering the bollards for emergency access, that would be obviously preferred over the plastic ones. And so getting information on the guidelines of that emergency access, how it would be affected, specific date on the effects of the proposed traffic closure, and how much potential traffic will actually be reduced on each side. And finally, what timeline do we have to, once we initiate the petition, how long do we have to, gather the appropriate majority signatures from the 400 stakeholder homes. And so I kind of threw out a lot there, but I'd love to get a little bit more feedback on those items.
I can maybe just handle one of them while Jim potentially reads.
Just one second. Thank you, Mr. Schnowski. Appreciate your participation tonight. We will turn things over to staff to try and provide an answer to your question, or at least take your question and get back to you. Nadar or Mr. Hadar, would you do that? Go ahead, please take the floor.
Sure, yeah, I'll begin. There was a couple questions that just on the last one, how much time within that for the petition to be submitted? There is no formal time limitation or shot clock or any of that for the petition to be circulated around from the neighborhood. It can be submitted to the city at any time. So that makes that element of it a little bit more clear. And then certainly, we can look into some of the other discussion points, and I think maybe Jim can address those.
Yeah, I think as far as data, I mean, we can provide any data that we have. I mean, we have data probably dating back to 1987 on Montgomery Road and some of the surrounding streets. But you know, part of the challenge is, you know, we'd like to know, you know, is the neighborhood supporting this before we expend a large amount of resources to set out traffic counters on every street in that neighborhood? Because I think that's sort of what this is probably going to require is a large volume of traffic counts to be conducted, speed, so that if something does go in, we're going to want to know what the before and after data looks like to see what the impact is on basically every street in the neighborhood. And also probably take a look at travel time considerations. How long does it take you to go, you know, if you're half the neighborhood is cut off the north side and the south side, you know, what are your travel time changes as you use your alternate routes? And also the other impact would be, our speed's going to go up on some of these other streets that are going to be now seeing more traffic than they were before. So that might result in a request for speed humps on some of these diverted streets. So there's a lot to look into here, and part of that is why we have the requirement for the petition that the neighborhood has to be on board with this before the city, you know, expends a large amount of resources towards studying this fully.
If I could just weigh in really quickly, I need you to clarify one thing for me. When our speaker spoke of neighborhoods and you of stakeholders, the number of 400 was mentioned. Does that number of 400 include every resident or every address that is impacted besides that just on that one road? In other words, does it cover the full neighborhood, or what we would consider the domino effect, the potential domino effect area? And I would like to just get that clarified, and then we will, let me ask this. Ms. Marcelino, are there any other speakers on this subject?
We don't have any more speakers, Chair.
Okay, so thank you very much. So after you clarify that, I'd like to open it up to questions of commissioners to staff.
Yeah, on that, to clarify that particular question, yes, Jim can potentially pull up that map again, but that 400 properties is that neighborhood, does comprise that neighborhood, and that's that has been the scope of the potentially impacted properties that we've been looking at kind of cohesively. You know, as we discussed earlier, it is a neighborhood, and therefore, you know, we want to consider the impacts throughout the neighborhood and not, you know, consider only a part of the equation and then find out there's problems later that were unintended consequences. So part of this is, you know, as the residents study this, they have to determine the pros and cons of the various options, and there's certain compromises that have to be made between convenience of having the ability to access both streets, Flores and Jans, depending on which side of the community you're in, versus the desire to, you know, calm traffic or reduce, you know, non-local traffic from driving through. So those are the kind of compromises that the residents will have to weigh in their ultimate decision.
Thank you. And as we open up to questions from the commissioners, we will have our discussion, of course, after you get your information from staff, but I'd like to let you know, as after spending so many years on the commission, I can tell you that the reason, there are two reasons that we go with getting the petitions done first. Number one, it is a way of notifying and including the entire neighborhood in the process and getting a legitimate concern before we have significant expenditure, get a legitimate concern from the neighborhood. That being said, it is hard work. There's no doubt about it. Getting the petitions out and signed is a hard work, but it's necessary data to have before we spend a lot of money. And with that, let's open up to questions of staff from our commissioners. And if you want to do the old-fashioned raise of the hand, I'd appreciate it so I don't miss anybody. I know, Mick. I know your background. You've put
Noted.
men on
Noted.
the moon, and you're realizing that, you know, I'm still amazed that men got to the moon. So you have to just roll with me. But no, I know that you are a rocket scientist, and I know this is not rocket science, but when you're trying to teach me, it's a little tough. So
I
let's
don't know.
open up-
Zoom could be pretty complicated. So
Right. Okay, so does anyone have any questions for staff? And let's start down the line. Commissioner Ferris, do you have any questions?
no, not this time. Mine was about the abilities of what we might have available. So thanks.
All right, Commissioner Pletcher, any questions?
Nothing additional. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And Vice Chair Email, any questions for staff?
Just a couple of questions. When I was looking at the chart, that was the bar graph that was measuring traffic in the neighborhood. On the chart itself, there's two numbers, or there's two bars for 2016. And I was just wondering if that was a typographical error, or were there really two measurements taken in 2016?
Yes, we took 2 measurements in 2016 at separate times.
And were the two measurements taken in 2016 because of the concern raised by the resurgence of a concern raised by the neighborhood regarding traffic on Montgomery?
Okay, I don't recall the particulars back then. I think one was related to the residents who spoke and raised their concerns. And I think the second one was prior to the meeting that we held at the library. We just wanted to take one more count just to make sure, you know, did the data change before we, you know, had that meeting.
Is there any hypothesis as to what has led to the increased traffic on Montgomery since 2006? It seems like suddenly, you know, sometime between 2001 and 2006, it kind of increased significantly, and it's held pretty steady over the past, 15 years. And I just wonder if the city has any guess or understanding as to why the traffic has increased.
I guess one of the things I'll point out though is that we have had more bypass traffic in the city as the 23 freeway is congested during those peak hours. So as a result, when some of that freeway flows off onto our arterial streets like Moore Park Road, when Moore Park Road gets congested, people find, okay, now I want to find another way to reduce my travel time. And so they start cutting through the neighborhoods. And it's not going to be 24 hours a day. It'll be just during those peak times when the freeway's backed up. People are getting off the freeway using the arterial streets, then they flow into the neighborhoods. So I think that's probably, you know, part of the cause.
Has the city considered that? I mean, my understanding is there's a freeway widening project ongoing presently with the 23 freeways. If that, when that comes to completion, is there any prognostication that, you know, the bypass traffic or the cut traffic is going to slide back down to, you know, maybe under 3,000 cars per day?
Yeah, I don't think we have any projections of what the improvements to the 23 freeway will do. Yeah, that's something that, a lot of the traffic from this point forward, it may be, may not reach those 2016 levels as businesses and things are done differently, the way people are, teleworking from home, things like that. So, we're sort of curious ourselves as to what our traffic volume levels are going to, revert to, or is it, ever going to reach those higher levels again? We're not sure.
Yeah, and if I may add, the 23 project by Caltrans actually is a rehabilitation project. It's not a expansion or widening project right now.
Okay.
Other questions? I have a few. First of all, speed humps were installed in 1989 and virtually immediately had an impact of a reduction of almost 30%. And my question is it possible that between 1989 and 2002, 3, or 4, that the speed humps have worn down and they're less of a deterrent than they used to be? And do they need to be perhaps something as simply as shored up or reinstalled? That would be one question. And the next question sort of tails off on something that Mr. Mashiko just brought up, and that is there is absolutely positively a new normal. We just don't know what the new normal is. We know that there are estimates of anywhere from 10 to 35% less work-related commuter traffic because of companies taking things like Zoom and others and working more flex schedules with their employees and all. And so after you answer my question on the speed humps, my next question is very simply, should we be waiting for at least 12 months, even with the petition, for at least 12 months after 100% opening takes place, so that we can get a judge on what the new normal is? Because I think if the new normal is affecting people's work, it may also affect the adult school with how they may offer some of their class offerings. Anyway, Mr. Mashiko, could you comment on the
height
necessary, the need of rehabilitating speed humps if necessary? Or
okay, yeah, in general, the speed humps, they don't get compressed significantly over time. They do maintain their shape, and I would imagine that over time that Montgomery has had several overlays. So when the overlays occurred, the speed humps were removed and then rebuilt back to standard 3-inch high specifications. So we do check them immediately after they're built. So we're confident that they've maintained their shape over the years.
thank you. I think what would be proper here is if members of the commission feel it's beneficial to have any discussion for staff or to share any opinions with staff, now would be the time to do it. Please keep in mind that this is not an action item. This is an information only item at this point. So of course we won't be taking the vote. Do any of commissioners have anything they'd like to have said on the record for staff to be aware of in regards to this, other than we will find out, how the community or the neighborhood, I should say, feels in regards to gathering those or to polling those 400 residents?
I wanted to just jump in, Mr. Chair, if I could.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I was just tail back to a question, because I know, Mr. Shanowski is, I believe, the representative for the neighborhood, if I'm not mistaken. And, I think the most important thing coming out of this is an informational item. This has been something long sought after by some of the neighbors in the community. Could staff or just make sure, my only thought is I just want to really set a clear timeline for Mr. Shanowski and the neighbors, that if they go out and diligently get this survey and get the results and turn it into the city, what would be the next steps, and how would a timeline kind of look look like? Just to be very clear and make sure that they understand. And maybe it's something that, you can just respond with, we're going to follow up and work very closely with them and lay out that timeline. But that's the one thing that really the neighbors that I spoke with wanted to stress is if we do everything the city wants us to do, what's the timeline before we actually can see some physical results? So that's the one thing I wanted to stress. It may not even require a response from Mr. Mashiko or any of staff, but it's just something that had crossed my mind, especially if Mr. Shanowski's still with us. I believe he may be. So.
Does staff have a response?
Yeah, I'll just start. Yeah, I think right now with the way our traffic volume levels are right now, we know that they are lower. Typically, when we do our traffic surveys, we like to do them during or when school is in session, everything's running 100%. Right now, we're not at that level. I think if we did a survey today, just like we did back in August of last year, we had lower numbers. So if we did a survey now, I think the numbers are going to definitely be on the lower side and may not help his cause. So I think periodically we are prepared to do some counts within the neighborhood because of the concerns here. So I think we will be taking some additional surveys just to see where we're at. As right now things are opening up, so we have noticed traffic volume has increased. But it will take time from the time they submit petitions. We'll have to check on all the signatures, make sure they're the property owners, and then conduct a large number of field surveys, not just counts. We're going to do license plate surveys as well, and that I believe if there's a closure, it's for 24 hours. I'm not sure if we're going to do them, for 24 hours, but we're probably going to pick most of the daylight hours of the day just to see, what is the range. I'm sure during the commute times, the shortcutting percentages are going to be much higher, and then during the non-peaks, they're going to drop off significantly. So this is it's a long process, and we will have to take this to the commission for a public meeting, and then ultimately it would go to city council for a decision.
Thank you.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Mashiko.
I had one more quick comment, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry.
Sure.
In talking with the neighbors, one of the reasons that they brought up why there's so much passion, I think, behind it, and this is again for staff just to take, is there is that 60-foot right of way on Montgomery, and with so many families being in the neighborhoods, there's not really any good sidewalk to walk on when you kind of come out of Montgomery. So that was just something else I wanted to raise. Just it's what I heard when I talked to some of the neighbors is with a sidewalk, maybe we would have been not so worried about the traffic, but when we have kids there and children and families that want to walk out to access some of the commercial zones around, commercial areas around the property or the residential neighborhoods, having sidewalks there was one of the reasons they brought up of why they just keep the fight going. So just take it for what it's worth. I'm just providing the feedback that I heard and some important points that I wanted just to share with you and staff. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Before we move on, our Public Works Director, Mr. Finley, had a question or a comment.
Yeah, just real quick, and this kind of goes to the general theme of the whole thing. Montgomery is a public street, and that neighborhood is all public streets, and actually, I think that neighborhood was probably originally built by the county, or at least a majority of it, and actually came to the city as it is. They call it it's the reason there's no sidewalks is because the county didn't ever put any in when they built the houses. And primarily it was because I think they wanted to have horse access along the sides of the road, so they didn't want concrete. But all that being said, one of the things that we have to always balance is the consequences of any action we make to all of the residents. Because again, there's residents in certain neighborhoods, they bought a certain house because they liked a certain thing about that neighborhood. And as soon as you go starting to change access points, even speed humps, for goodness sakes, people are impacted, and they will fill these chambers. If you didn't ask them a question and ask them what they thought, they will come here and we will get to hear their side of the story. They're not here tonight because we're not proposing to do anything. And that's why that petition process is so important. And that can be not even just closing a street, curb extensions. I've had neighborhoods come unglued over curb extensions. So it's important, and crosswalks. We proposed raised crosswalks, and someone's like, no, not in my neighborhood. So no matter what we do, there's people on both sides of every issue. And if you can get consensus in a neighborhood, you know what, we'll bring anything forward that makes sense, because that means we have community support. And it's just step one. And imagine your own streets and your own neighborhoods, that we're all impacted. Everybody comes and goes on Montgomery, and you impact all those folks. So it just has to kind of be that process. Otherwise, we head down a rabbit hole that we'll never get out of.
And just to highlight that commentary, that kind of plays to the 60% threshold. And in fact, the threshold for speed humps now is 75%. Because of that reason, because even though 60% of the residents may support it, you could have a very agitated 40% or saying, I didn't ever bargain for any change. I wasn't anticipating any changes to my street when I bought this house. So, and in fact, Jim Michiko and I have advised the neighborhood representative that the higher the number, the better, because just 60 by itself has been proven in the past to not really be enough for the speed humps, and that's why the council had adjusted that threshold to 75%. So,
and one
last thing I want to say is, as staff, we are absolutely supportive of working with the neighborhood to find solutions, to find traffic calming solutions, you name it. We will sit down with anybody who wants to talk about options and go through any and all of them. But we just need consensus in order to actually recommend something to the commission.
And the final comment I'd like to make to all of our commissioners is, all of us, all the commissioners that I'm aware of are pretty much out there in the neighborhood. People know us, they'll give us comments, and there's no doubt that Commissioner Pletcher got some passionate comments. However, this is one of the few issues that have come before me recently that had 0 emails. And the one thing I would suggest to every one of our commissioners is, if someone is truly passionate and they have a life, they're excited, and they've got families to raise and all, and they don't want to take the time of sitting in our meeting, to simply send us an email with the representation of their passion makes a difference. I know that if I hear from 3 people, that raises my bar a little bit. But I think here at the commission, it's important for us to get their comments in writing, because that helps us understand what the neighborhood is truly thinking versus just commenting to 1 or 2 of our commissioners. With that, if there are no more comments from staff or our commission, we're going to move forward on item 6B, which is the Lawrence Drive and Teller Road intersection. And that will be presented by our engineering associate, Masood Razavi.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Razavi, the floor is yours.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair Lemo, and all the members of the commission for the opportunity to provide you with an update on a capital project. My name is Masood Razavi, and I'm an engineering associate in the Public Works Department, Capital Projects Division. I'll be providing you with an update on the Lawrence Drive and Teller Road intersection improvement project. Before discussing the current state of the project, let me first begin with a brief project overview. The intersection of Lawrence Drive and Teller Road is located north of Hillcrest Drive and west of Rancho Conejo Boulevard within the growing industrial and biotech business region of Newbury Park. Currently, as Teller Road crosses Lawrence Drive, the intersection is a four-way stop and is unique as it's the only one in the city that does not truly align the eastbound and westbound of the roadway. As you can see, the large offset, about 30 feet, is a visual barrier to predictable flow of traffic. The city conducted a traffic study warrant analysis in 2009. Based on increasing traffic volumes, the intersection has outgrown the level of efficiency of an always stop control, particularly so when looking forward as the area is growing, and a more efficient level of traffic control is needed. As such, it became the top priority for signalization in 2013. This is the westbound view of Teller Road approaching the intersection. As you can see, the 30-foot offset causes a visual barrier to flow of traffic. And the eastbound view of Teller Road approaching Lawrence Drive. The double yellow lines line up with the edge of the road on the east of Lawrence Drive. This is the northbound view of Lawrence Drive as we approach Teller Road. The proposed project will help achieve our original goals and objectives, which are eliminate or lessen the intersection offset by realigning Teller Road, provide traffic signal control in order to reduce intersection conflicts between automobiles, pedestrians, and bicyclists, better serve existing volumes and future growth, improve pedestrian safety by adding marked crosswalks with pedestrian crossing buttons and LED countdown crossing displays, and improve illumination after sundown with improved intersection lighting. In 2016, City was provided with an intersection control evaluation study by Kimley Horn and Associates, which was revised in 2020. The study is a data-driven, performance-based framework to evaluate intersection alternatives and identify optimal solutions, which will allow the city to implement solutions that are safer, more balanced, and more cost-effective. The study offered multiple options to improve the intersection. No change, remain an always stop. Traffic signal with 3 options, no roadway improvement, minor widening to Teller Road, major widening to Teller Road, and a single lane roundabout. The major goal was to address the intersection offset. This image shows the city's existing right-of-way at this location. To eliminate the offset, we can utilize this existing right-of-way to align Teller Road on both sides of Lawrence Drive. Therefore, we looked at options of single lane roundabout and signalization with major road widening. Here's what a potential roundabout would look like. Advantages of this option are, it eliminates the offset, uses existing right-of-way, and improves intersection visibility. The disadvantages of this option are, it has the highest design and construction costs, upwards of $3.5 million total, unfamiliar intersection configuration. Recently, the first functional roundabout on an arterial street was constructed on Duesenberg. Also, conflict with underground utilities, loss of catch basin on Teller Road, impact to landmark trees on the northeast corner, impacts to existing driveways on both Teller Road and Lawrence Drive at the pedestrian crosswalks, and to on-street parking on Teller Road. It precludes bike lanes at the bottleneck on the westbound Teller Road, as well as landscaping in the center median due to heavy truck traffic. Here's the concept of signalization with major road widening. The advantages of this option are, same as the roundabout, it eliminates the offset, uses existing right-of-way, and improves intersection visibility. but also it improves pedestrian safety with four-way crosswalk and improved lighting and increased capacity for through movement in westbound direction. The disadvantages of this option are no improvements to bicycle facilities, need to relocate catch basins on Teller Road, and loss of on-street parking. All alternatives were evaluated based on their impacts to existing infrastructure, landmark trees, local businesses, pedestrian and bicycle facilities, as well as budget constraint and overall project cost. Signalization with major road widening became the preferred option. Here's the civil drawing of the proposed intersection improvements. I recognize that this might look a bit busy. So here's a cleaner version of the same plan showing the overview of the proposed intersection improvements. As you can see, on Teller Road, eastbound and westbound will be aligned. On the east side of Lawrence Drive, the current single westbound lane will be transformed and we will have dedicated left turn, through, and through right lanes, as well as reconstruction of the southern edge of the street, which will allow complete alignment of the two sides. On the west side of Lawrence Drive, restriping will create two lanes to match the alignment on the east side. On Lawrence Drive, restriping will align left turn lanes and will add an additional through lane on both sides of the intersection. As for on-street parking, there will be no impact on Lawrence Drive. On Teller Road, on the north side, loss of about 6 spaces, and on the south side, we will lose about 5 spaces. This is the continuation of Teller Road on the west side of Lawrence Drive. The striping will extend and connect the existing striping at Marion Street. This is how the intersection will be transformed, which will prevent worsening of peak period congestion and improving efficiency, improving vehicular safety, and improving pedestrian safety by installing 2 additional crosswalks and improved lighting at the intersection. The overall budget for this project is $1,259,000, $950,000 from Newbury Park developer fees, remaining $309,000 from various general fund accounts. The preliminary design is complete, and currently we're in 80% design review with June 2021 as design completion date. The project construction is targeted to begin this fall with an estimated duration of 9 months for completion of construction. City staff has performed various outreach efforts and has incorporated public input and comments into the project. In addition, the design and specifications of the project will incorporate elements such as construction phasing and night work to minimize impacts to the public during the construction. In the future, we will conduct public meetings with businesses within 500 feet of the project to communicate the design, and will continue our outreach program to keep the public informed of construction activities via hard mail notifications, as well as provide updates via city website. The staff recommendation is to receive report and recommend approval of the final design concept to the City Council so that staff can seek City Council authorization to advertise the project for construction bids. This concludes my presentation for Lawrence Drive and Teller Road intersection improvement project, and we'll be glad to answer any project-related questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Razavi. That was an excellent report, very concise. And as someone who drives that intersection many, many, many times a week, I think your solution sounds very good. With that, let's first open it up for any questions from our commissioners of staff. Hearing no questions.
I do have a quick question, Mr.
Oh, I'm
Chair.
sorry.
Sorry.
All right, go ahead.
Let me find my lower hand button. Oh, Zoom. thank you for the presentation. I appreciate it. I just wanted to really just follow up on some of the bike and the bicycle aspects for Teller Road and the intersection. You could just review with me one more time. I know Teller Road, it says in the report, it's a class 3 bicycle route. Are we losing or gaining any bicycle, related, by doing these improvements? Can you just walk me through the bicycle considerations just one more time, please?
Yeah, absolutely. We will not be losing any bicycle facilities.
Okay.
The street is signed as coexisting, a bicycle and a vehicle coexisting. It's still going to remain the same. One thing that we will lose, I mean, the biggest issue on this may be that the parking, but that's aside from the fact there's no bicycle facilities that will be lost in this.
Okay. Was there any consideration, just as a follow-up, was there any consideration to make any additions or improvements to the intersection for bicycles? Perhaps painted lanes or just, helping, because as a bicyclist, I always like to see what ways we can make improvements or make any considerations. And I know it's better to, as they say, to kill two birds with one stone. But as you guys are looking at the area, was there any other considerations for any bicycle improvements along Teller there?
If I can just jump in, I know one of the things with the signal that is being proposed, we do use video detection nowadays. So with the video, we are able to set up detection zones that are much easier for the cyclists to be detected. And that's one of the things with the technology that's has advanced over time, is that we are able to accommodate more and more bicyclists in the through lanes, which normally they have to wait for a car to show up or get off the bike and go push the button. That's more or less been eliminated.
That's absolutely fantastic. Thank you. I was always just so curious, coming back to technology, as Commissioner Ferris brought up earlier. It's always great to see new improvements. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other commissioner questions? Thank you very much, staff. I know that at this time then, we can ask if there's any commission discussion. This is an action item. The item we will be voting on is, we've received the report, but to recommend approval of this final design concept that we've seen tonight and request staff seek City Council authorization to advertise the project for construction bids. Do any of our commissioners have any discussion on that item? Hearing none, then I would ask Ms. Marcelino to please call for a vote of the commissioners.
Before that, Chair, I would like to mention that for the record, no one has requested to speak and no written statement was received on this item. And now I'm going to call the vote.
Thank you very much for keeping me straight on that. I apologize. She gives me fantastic notes, but sometimes I skip ahead in the notes. So I apologize. Thank you, Mr. Marcelino.
Commissioner Ferris,
Yes.
Commissioner Fletcher,
Yes.
Vice Chair Eno,
Yes.
Chair Lemo.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0. The Traffic Commission makes recommendations to the City Council, and interested parties may attend the City Council meeting and speak either for or against the recommendation of the Traffic Commission. Any person wishing to appeal a decision of the Traffic Commission shall file a written appeal and pay an appeal fee with the City Clerk Department within 14 calendar days of this decision. The matter will be referred to the City Council at the earliest reasonable and available date. The appeal fee will be refunded only if the City Council overturns the Traffic Commission's decision. An appeal form is available from the recording secretary. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Marcelino. And next we will move to item 7. Actually, I believe we can just move to item 7 because it is a status report. And I would like to hand this off to who will be making that status report tonight. There is no action required. Who will be making the report on the status of those two items, 7A and 7B?
Yeah, I'll just give a brief recap of what item 7 says, Chair Lemo. These are the two items you heard at the last meeting, the item on the marked crosswalk with rapid flashing beacons for Wendy Drive at Charlotte Street for pedestrian safety. That's going to our city council on May 11th for approval. And then on June 8th, the item on the flashing yellow arrow left turn displays will be reviewed by our city council for approval, so we can go on to implementation.
Thank you very much. Any of our commissioners have any questions on those items? Hearing none, then we will move to item 8, which is commission referrals from March 17th, and there are none. The work and program schedule, which is attached, and we won't go into that unless any of you have questions over that, I should say. And hold on just a second here. Wrong meeting day. Here we are. Anyone have any comments on our work program and commission schedule, which is attached? Hearing none, do we have any traffic commission comments or discussion prior to our last agenda item? Okay, so we have an item to decide on in regards to our meeting scheduled for May 19th. We have actually taken both actions. What I mean by that is, in the past, we have canceled the meeting to the following month, or we have also, which I don't think we like doing anymore, but we've also had one meeting that we started years ago, a half hour late, to accommodate the ride of silence. I would like to put it out to our commissioners or to staff, which you think is best, but how do we feel about, well, let me ask this so that we can have a discussion. What does the work schedule look like? In other words, is staff's job made more difficult by us literally canceling the May 19th meeting and just dealing with whatever work is on your plate on the June 16th meeting?
Okay, yeah, I just want to jump in on that one. We really have really no items pressing to come back for having a meeting in May. What we're hoping to do is have 2 items for June, because if we come back next month, we may have just 1 item and then have 1 item in June. So instead of having 1 item at each meeting, have both items in the month of June.
Thank you. It is very kind of you to be so respectful of our time as well. So with that, is there commission discussion on voting to cancel our May 19th meeting? Let's start with that first.
Mr. Chair, I think it sounds like we should cancel our next meeting and
Can
move
I
to
take
June.
that as a motion, Commissioner Fletcher?
Happy
So we have-
to make a motion to cancel the May 19th, 2021 meeting. It coincides with, of course, the ride of silence, and move it to our next meeting would be June.
Okay, so what we will do is this. Ms. Marcelina, do I need a second?
No.
Okay, we have a motion to cancel our May 19th meeting. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, Ms. Marcelino, would you call the roll for a vote on that, please?
Chair, may I please request a hand vote?
Perfect. All those in favor, please raise your right hand or your left hand, whichever one can be seen on camera.
Okay, motion carries 4-0. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And so with that, if there are no other commissioner comments or discussion, no other comments from staff, I have just one. Thank you very much, staff, for particularly the concise reports we received tonight. I really appreciate that. I hope you know we value all of you, but I'd like to single out a particular staff member. And there is no specific purpose for me. I did not receive any tickets or anything, but I want to thank Sergeant Carl Patterson for his service to our city and for probably having to put up with the most obstinate citizens we have, because if we're stopped for traffic, he's not a guy I want to see. So with all that, we're going to adjourn our meeting until Wednesday, June 16th, 2021. I can honestly tell you that I don't know if we will be back to a face-to-face meeting or a virtual meeting, but I know that staff will keep us informed. And with that, I thank all of you very much. And our meeting is adjourned. Good evening.